Meeting at 6:01.
This meeting is being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. Just to do the perfunctory things about our mission of the Chuckanut Community Forest District is to ensure the entirety of the property is protected in perpetuity in public ownership with respect to its ecological, recreational, and educational functions. We have served and completed our duties as a fiscal mechanism for paying for the property. This meeting will be recorded. A visual or audio recording of this meeting will be posted on our website, and it should be visual and audio recording. Anyone on this meeting should know that it's going to be publicly available on our website. And if you choose to speak with your camera off or by calling by telephone, only your voice will be recorded. I'll call the meeting formally to order. The commissioners and citizens of the community and the Open Public Meetings Act. We're holding hybrid meetings both in person and online. The in-person meeting is 1108 11th Street, Suite 303, and online through Zoom. Roll call. John Hymas.
I'm here.
Hugh Beebe.
Here.
John McLaughlin. Ed Grumbine. If Ed or John McLaughlin do not, I don't notice them, please let me know when they attend and we can recognize that formally in the record at the time. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
You wanted to make that one change, Frank, about talking about the fire plan?
That would be
Here
an
comes.
amendment, yeah. So I was hoping Ed would be here because
He's here now. He's just logging in.
Great. I'll let the record show that Ed Grumbine joined us at 6:03 and that we have just started the meeting. I was hoping we could have a discussion about this and hoping particularly that if Nicole is here, she could clarify some of the issues. I would appreciate a motion to add that item to our agenda under new business.
I can make a motion to support that.
As a motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
By John, moved by Ed. All those in favor? Well, is there more discussion about it prior to a presentation about it? This is
Going to start with
excuse me, Hugh?
Going to start that when Robin or when the park director shows. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Nicole.
we will put in a new business. We do old business first, so hopefully it will be at a time when she's here.
Okay.
And we could certainly have an initial discussion and bring it up when she does arrive. So all those in any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say yes.
Yes.
I
see a unanimous decision to add it to the agenda. Thank you, gentlemen.
Did we get a second on that?
We did. John Hymas seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Then we also need a motion now to approve the agenda as amended. If you've had a chance to look at the agenda, if not, take a quick look. And when you're ready, we'd love to have a motion. And then we can have a second to
Move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
Hugh moves and John Hymas seconds. Any further discussion about approving the agenda? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. With respect to old business, we do. Is there a report from the? I don't think there's anybody here from the public, so I guess we'll move past that for right now.
There are the minutes.
Excuse me, Robin?
The minutes to approve?
Oh, right. I'm sorry. There are the minutes from July 26th that were appended at the very end of Robin's most recent email. If people had a chance to look at those.
Yes.
I went through the minutes and I moved that we approve them.
Hugh?
I got one little addition about the 12th line from the bottom on page 3 of 4. It says that I was like them to send copies to the city and also the Murray Murray Archives at Western. I'd like to say that's the Murray Goltz Archives at Western. So it's
Oh.
clear.
So is that different from the state archives?
Keith Murray and Barney Goltz. It's the building there on 25th Street and College Way.
Bill McDonald Parkway. Yeah.
So, and that is the official name of the state archive at Western Washington University.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's basically the Washington State Archives, so.
It's the local Washington State Archive. Yeah, there are many locations.
Keith
Yes.
Murray was my Washington State history teacher.
Ah,
That was a couple of weeks ago.
And I served with Barney Goltz on the planning committee for the campus.
Yeah.
So I like that.
So we have minutes. We've had one motion to amend. Are there further additions, corrections, or deletions that would be recommended for the minutes? Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to do that, to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Moved by Ed, seconded by Hugh. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Yo.
Unanimously passes. The minutes are approved.
here comes John.
John McLaughlin's here. Great. Good.
Woohoo.
We'd have more than a quorum. We had everybody here. So let the minutes show that John McLaughlin joined us at 6:08. Hi, John. Good to see you. All that we've done so far is to introduce, take roll, approve the agenda. We amended it with one item, and that is talk about the fire risks in the forest and the management of the fire risks and the city's role and what their plan is. And secondly, we approved the minutes with one minor correction to insert the correct name of the archive at Western Washington University. And those were both approved unanimously.
Yeah, I'd have to abstain on the minutes anyway, because I wasn't at the last meeting and
Right.
it was ready for this meeting. And as soon as it was about to start, my hard drive crashed.
The
Oh, God.
world conspires, John.
So
The only other thing is
Yeah.
to say that Nicole had noticed, had made it known to us that she was going to join us. She's not going to be able to join us till about 6:30.
Okay.
So the first item is going to be pre-old business is the Park Advisory Board meeting report. If there is one, John, did you get minutes or were you able to attend?
I gotta say, I was looking forward to attending again, but then my wife and my daughter came up with walking pneumonia. And so I decided I didn't want to spread that to anyone if I were infected. So I missed the meeting.
Worries. We appreciate all many times you've gone, John. And we can catch up if someone else from on the park board comes, we can hear from them, or we'll hopefully get the meetings minutes eventually.
Yeah, maybe like John Bleffen.
Exactly. Old business, the stewardship of the 100-acre wood, reports on the meetings, communication with Nicole and others about continued stewardship of the 100-acre wood. So I was able to talk to the folks that were considering doing that. They remain interested in it. They, however, have a very complex approval process, and I'm not sure that would make it through that approval process prior to our sunsetting. I was unaware of how complex that approval process is, but it has to go through the entire system to the highest level and be approved by their board. They are interested in doing that, but it is like ours, it's not a board that meets all the time and doesn't have an executive committee can make decisions in the absence of a quorum. There was enthusiasm for doing it. Because we couldn't confirm where that would go, I didn't yet talk to Nicole about it, and that's a bit of an awkward situation. We certainly can talk with her about it tonight and see what she thinks. From what I've heard, the city does have a plan for our budget that they've made, but they haven't talked to us about that. So if they have plans, we should probably know what they are and see if there's a common ground we can find, and hopefully we can look at that issue when we talk with Nicole. In general and principle, there was an interest in doing the work and a belief that that was a reasonable budget to do that work. It isn't a commitment, however, in that, like I said, it was very clear to me, made clear to me that that would require approval at a higher level. That means it may not happen, I guess, is the main thing to know, is that we may not have time to make that happen. And that's just the way life is, I guess.
Yeah.
There are more questions about that, or comments, thoughts?
Wait, what is it that we're not going to be able to make happen?
John, you weren't there, but what we've been talking about for a while is to try to allocate some of the remaining funds that we have to another institution that would be willing to do things like water quality studies. And I think, as you recommended in an earlier discussion, also do some assessment of the
Amphibians.
Well, amphibians was one suggestion, but also the overall impact on the property of things like trails being closed and looking at the bigger picture of the ecological integrity of the parcel. So that was, do you remember that, John? Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So still working on that. It's a work in progress and one that may be difficult. We might have a special meeting if we can get the approval process through their statement of interest through their approval process.
Within the last few weeks, I did notice Nicole expressed objection to that, working with a third party for monitoring.
She did.
This is public property. It's open to the public and people can monitor. There should not be a problem with that.
But we'll need to have that discussion with Nicole, and I think that the land trust is interested in it being a very cooperative thing. I'm interested in being a very cooperative thing. If the city doesn't want to do it, I just want to understand why. And if they've already made a plan for our budget, we should talk with them about that too. But I hear you, John. We also have on the old business agenda is a press release for the conservation easement. It's a very complex process with 3 different documents, the last of which won't be signed. I think, Bob, you can correct me, but it's around at our time of dissolution, or I think even after our dissolution. Is that correct? When the final document's signed?
The last document to be signed between the city and the Whatcom Land Trust will be signed and recorded sometime after our dissolution. That's correct.
Right. So we can certainly make a press release. I think crafting it would be a little bit challenging, but I think recognizing that in spirit is done and the parts that we're involved with is completed. And I assume that that's not a barrier to it happening. So I don't, I just open the floor for discussion about making a press release about the conservation easement.
I can chime in a bit on that. Number one, we really can't release anything until the papers are signed. As you just mentioned, Frank, it doesn't mean that we can't draft something that could then be released quickly when we still have in the next month the responsibilities of being commissioners. So that's one point. Another point would be we definitely should do it because this telling the end of our story, and given the press around the completion of the payoff, so to speak, and the lack of public understanding of the remaining work to be done, i.e. the conservation easement, it gives us another opportunity to craft a narrative that's closer to the reality of our work and the facts of the case, if you will, that our work wasn't done until now. And so we need to describe that in straightforward terms, and a press release seems the best way to do it.
Bob Carmichael?
Just to add on to what Ed said and to be very clear, to make sure everybody remembers, we have signed and recorded the amended conservation easement. So that is done. What remains to be done is putting it into a version where it's between the city and the land trust. Also done is the assignment to the land trust. So basically, everything is done except putting the name on it of Whatcom Land Trust as being the grantee. That's what that second paper is going to do, that second recording that is going to happen after the park district dissolves. There are a few other minor changes because there was language that once the land trust owns it, they don't need to have that language in the conservation easement anymore. It's non-substantive. But other than that, I would say we are at a point right now where we are done and the key documents have been recorded.
I don't quite understand why, with all the lawyering that is going on these things, that one wouldn't sunset and then the next one would take over, 10 minutes later. Why another date?
Once the way the agreement was written is that as soon as we are done we've dissolved, then that second agreement can be signed and recorded, but we don't have any way of making that happen because we won't exist anymore. So it's really between the land trust and the city to make it happen. And in communications with the land trust, they're ready to go. They want to know, they want us to let them know as soon as dissolution so they can get that done. I think that is the intent, Hugh, that it happened right away.
Okay.
And the reason it can't happen now is that we're still in existence, right?
Well, it's because the city wants to make sure that our dissolution happens before they sign it. That's really what.
Oh, so it could happen. I wondered what the technical reason was.
Yeah, the technical reason is the city, that was one of the conditions they had in the negotiation, that they would sign the second amended version after we dissolved. That was something they wanted, and it really didn't matter to us.
Bob, was there a legal reason for that?
I would say that the reason is the city just wants to make sure that we live up to our part of the agreement and dissolve before they sign the second amended version. That's the reason.
We're legally obligated to dissolve as a result of their actions. This sounds like a profound breach of trust.
I don't think it's a breach of trust. I think it's maybe being overly cautious, but people do agree to do things all the time and don't follow through on them. I mean, that does happen.
See, what I would have done if I was in charge of everything was said, okay, at noon on that such and such a date, we will dissolve, and at 12:10 on such and such the same date, the land trust will take over, and the thing will be signed with the city.
Well, it's somewhat academic in that we've already done all those things, and that's all set and in place.
I mean, you all wanted to get this notice out and everything, but then you got to wait.
Well, I think
but
we're going to saying is maybe we don't need to wait. Actually,
my point is we don't need to wait. Everything's been done. Really, this is just one little loose end. And if we would have known, we still don't know our date of dissolution. So it wouldn't have been possible to have put a date of dissolution in the agreement because we have things to do, and we're still talking about what we might do. So back then we knew even less than we know now. So we couldn't commit to a date of dissolution. We could have.
Well, we can in your judgment, though, Bob. We could make a press release that says the only there's a formal detail that needs to be executed after our dissolution, right? That would just be a footnote in the
I
press
think it
release.
would be a footnote, yes, to the main point that the conservation easement was amended. And it's been assigned to the land trust. Those are the key points, yes.
I'm still troubled. If we are legally obligated to dissolve by a certain date, we could dissolve before that, and that leads to some uncertainty. But if the city is reluctant to sign until they're absolutely certain we've dissolved, you could flip that around and look at it from our side. If we're going to disappear before they're going to do anything, they could just as well say, no, well, now that they're out of the picture, we've decided not to sign it.
Well, that shows that we trust them and they may not trust us. I think that's the
So
simple part.
understand, this is important to understand.
Nicole's here with us, by the way, for all of you.
Hello, Nicole. The city is substantively bound right now, okay, to the first amended conservation easement. It's in place, it's binding on the city, and it's binding on the land trust. The park district no longer has an interest in that conservation easement. We assigned it away. So it's done and it exists. The agreement for a second restated amended conservation easement was principally at the request of Ranjack so that the land trust would be the record grantee. That's it. There's no other substantive change to the document. So I would say this is a formality that we're talking about, and it isn't a reason for holding up anything. A press release, if you want to do a press release, there's no reason to hold that up.
Thanks, Bob. That's a good clarification. Appreciate it. Is there further discussion? Is there a volunteer or volunteers to work on that press release?
I can speak to that. I don't want to draft it in the first go round, but I'm happy to polish it at the last go round.
I'm happy to read it.
I'd be happy to help edit too.
So John and Hugh and I, at least one of us.
I mean, I can write something up and send it around and you guys can add to it if that would be helpful.
Yeah, or I could draft too.
Okay.
So I'll draft it and we'll have everybody edit it, okay? And Robin
good.
can make that happen. Great.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's an exciting time and we have a lot to be proud of, and I'm anxious to get that done.
Do we
So
want
this-
to set a timeline on all that? Do we want this press release out in the next month before our next meeting? Or does it make a difference? What do we want?
We have 3 weeks till our next meeting and potentially last meeting.
I can tell you that I am booked solid and will not be able to work on it probably until midweek next week, probably on either Tuesday or Thursday. I think the 31st is the first day I would have to, where I could really put my nose to the grindstone and get it done.
I can start looking at it as soon as it shows up.
Yeah. So if I can get it out on the 31st, a couple of days to turn around with other folks.
Sure.
Ed. So we'll have a goal of getting it out the first or second, something like that.
Frank, I think with you and your background with this whole movement from the start, you can really begin a great press release. And
Thank you for your confidence, Sean.
yeah, Well, I mean, with responsible development and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, no, I'm not being facetious. Thank you. It's
Sure.
great. I'd
Yeah.
be
So,
happy to.
be good to get your early input and stuff in it, and then we can polish it up and get it out. Maybe the first of next month. It's close. So, yeah.
What I know about press releases, if they're short, they're better.
Oh,
And
of
so
course.
I'm thinking under a page,
Yes.
and most folks are going to take a piece of that and a soundbite, and that's about it.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll, yeah,
You go back to just straight journalism, like
yeah,
who, what, where, when.
yep.
Why.
Probably
And then
only
don't
16 pages out.
don't forget the party.
And then we can add the why.
Yeah,
Well, after the draft is completed, maybe we could ask Robin, just a heads up, maybe Robin, that you might be responsible for getting it out to the media, or at least be thinking about that a little bit, because we can write the greatest thing in the world, but we got to get it out there too.
great. So we got that done. Now, with respect to the dissolution of Chuckanut Community Forest Park District, Robin has done a ton of work, and I was hoping she can update us on the current status of that, and that is the next item on the agenda. And the first thing in that discussion is going to be about our audit. And I talked with Robin today, and I think we're most of the way there with the audit, with some details still to do, of course. But Robin, over to you.
So I have turned over all the information for 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23 through the end of July, with the exception of the approved minutes for July. So I will be sending other things into them as they become available. And then I will also set up with Andy and Karen, Andy at the city of Bellingham and Karen at Whatcom County, if other things need to be sent as finalization of that audit, that they can send those things. And I will give them a list of the things as I understand it that they need to send. I did put in an email to the auditor we're working at, Dina Garza, and she hasn't gotten back to me yet just about what the status of the audit is. And so we're just waiting to find that. So that's pretty much where the audit is. They have everything now, so just a question of their going through it. So, and they were going to try and get it done as much as possible in August, so they could build the majority of it at the beginning of September. So I also checked in with her about that, whether she thinks that timeline is still going to work. Any questions about the audit from anybody?
Sounds good. Thanks, Robin.
So the next thing was motion to authorize, I talked to Liku today, and a motion to authorize the closing of the petty cash fund and authorize a check to Whatcom County, which basically we're paying ourselves back because it's our money and we're going to put it into the general fund at Whatcom County. So we're not giving it to anybody else at this point. We're just taking those $2,900 and miscellaneous and transferring it back into there. There's not going to be any more checks written on the petty cash
Robin,
account.
just to clarify though, I don't think that goes to the county general fund. That goes into our petty cash.
That's what I was trying to say.
Fund. Yeah,
It
exactly.
goes into our fund, the Park District's fund at Whatcom County, the one that they manage for us.
Got it.
Right. No, it's not going into a general fund, and it's not going into the Greenways fund. Everything will go into the Greenways fund that's left.
That's the petty cash, and that's how it'll work. That's good. And then a motion to authorize closing PO box is next.
Well, I was hoping to do a motion on closing the petty cash tonight. And one person who's a signer on the account has to go in. And this is the part that was a little confusing. They say whoever's on the business license, but there's nobody listed on the business license. It's just listed as Chuckanut Community Forest. And I don't think that all 5 commissioners have to go in. I think just as long as you're listed, we have the business license and you have to go in. I will check on that to make sure again, but that was the initial thing that they told me. Just trying to get, there's all these little details that I'm just trying to iron out for you guys so the closing goes smoothly.
Thank you, Robin.
And then, so I can go forward, or if you guys want to do a motion on that now, it's just to get it.
Why don't we go through all of it and then do whatever motions we need to do at one time, if that's okay?
Okay, the next was the closing of the PO box, and I talked to Bob's office and we talked about date of dissolution, and so closing it as of whatever our date of dissolution is. So we need to talk about that. And then I'll just have a copy of the motion and you'll have it signed by you, Frank, and then I'll take it to them. And all these little details, again, I talked to the post office, and that's because we're not a traditional business form, that's what we worked out that would work for them. That would also be easy for us to do.
So
Robin?
it would actually be September 22nd, is that, or 21st? Which day is are we shooting for dissolution?
Well, the last day is the 21st.
Yeah.
So it has to be by the
21st, yeah.
21st.
So in the draft, in the language there, in the minutes, it says September 30th, but we put September 21st in there, right?
Right.
Okay.
I just, when I was typing it, I was thinking of the date that the post office box closes. We paid for it through the end of September, but we can close at any time.
Yeah, since we're not going to be here and in business to open the box, it's probably better not to have any mail in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also put a call for or a address forwarding thing in, so it will be forwarded to the city of Bellingham.
Okay,
And
great.
then
Perfect.
Bob and I talked about that, and we only need a motion to authorize the closing of the safety deposit box. And the contents to be given, well, I don't know where you want them to be given. So that's part of the next discussion to City of Bellingham, or if they will go to the Washington State Archives. So I've had conversations with Bob and Luke at his office, and with the Washington State Archives, and with Evan, who's the records retention person at the City of Bellingham. And so the issue is that all the records of the Park District need to go somewhere, and we could just give them all to the archives and they could sort through them. This includes digital ones. They're not really interested in the website, only the documents on that, but we have all those documents elsewhere. But our emails and all of that stuff, they could deal with that there. Potentially. It's a little unclear how much time all this is going to take, especially with the emails. And that will become more clear as I get more information from people and delve into it more. The other thing is that the City of Bellingham is willing to take on all our records, and they would do the archiving at the select time. And there is the option when you archive that the people who are archiving could hold on to the records, or you could put them in the Washington State Archives. And we could request that things not be held in the Bellingham, the city of Bellingham, but could be given to the Washington State Archives at that point. So the big question is, you guys are thinking or feeling about archiving the records, and if you want to attempt to do it ourselves in the next 3 weeks, which would either way it goes, it's going to mean work from all of us to go through the records that you have that I might not have and pass them over to me.
So can I ask a question?
Or we could send them to the city. Again, we would still have to go through the records that we all have. And then the city could deal with it, but they would have more time to deal with it. So those are two options. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Bob?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Bob, are there documents that we specifically have to turn over to the city that they're going to want to keep? Are there documents like that?
No. We have the option of turning over all the records to the state archives, should we choose to do that. We could also turn the records over to the city, or we could turn some of them to the city and some to the archives. I think it'd be better to send them all one way or the other, and that's going to be a board decision.
Right. Robin, since you're here, Nicole, since you're here, is there anything that you would find useful that we could give to you guys as opposed to things we send to the archive?
Well, excuse me, I did see an email that was pretty specific about, all the different types of records.
Breaking up, Nicole, we can't really
Can
hear.
you not hear me?
I can.
Barely?
We can hear you now.
You can? Okay.
I can.
We have, there's a very specific email that I saw from our records coordinator.
I think you might be freezing, Frank.
Yeah, Frank is definitely frozen, and everybody, I believe, can hear Nicole just fine. So
Okay.
Frank needs to unfreeze, so to speak.
Frank, you hear us? No.
Soon.
There he is. Hi, Frank, you're back. Yay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said,
It's okay.
Nicole, I apologize.
It's okay. I stopped and waited till you unfroze. So I
Thank
saw
you.
an email from our records custodian and I have been in contact with the webmaster because we very much would like to accept your records and and especially your website. And it's good through September of 2024. I think it's an amazing, useful repository. And I think the city could make your records much more available to people who want to investigate a park district. However, I don't think that we have any, I don't think that we would ever take all of your records and make them available on the website because it's 10 years of I don't even know what. But I think your website is really well documented, and I have a request into IT, and I checked again today and I haven't heard back on a plan. I checked with our communication director and she told me to work with the webmaster and come up with a plan to migrate it. But that is our intention, and to have that be a resource that would live under the 100-acre wood as a history. And it would probably require some sort of migration, but the records custodian for the city outlined a plan for how they would and are willing and able to accept your records, index them, and put them in the records center, and also cautioned Robin in an email about the selectivity of the archives in records they want to accept, and that it takes some time, but I don't really know much about that. So I would I would defer to you guys, and I recognize that it's a little bit daunting to imagine handing over this much material. I'm also happy to help with that after you dissolve. I don't think it has to happen necessarily before your dissolution, and the city is willing and able to accept all your assets and liabilities and records. So that's as was stated in the but I totally recognize that you may want to have some records go to the archives. I know that the state archives, they're pretty picky in my experience. So that, but we would put them under the designated retention value of what your entity is, and they would be expunged according to our retention. And we have a great records custodian who's willing and able to do all of that for you. Said that he would index them and put them in the record center, all your hard records, and send the Parks Department indexes. But I'm more interested personally from a public standpoint. I think that the Parks District history is worth retaining on the city's public website, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you very much. And there are a lot of I think most of the key records are actually already there.
I agree. That's the only thing I'm interested in, frankly.
Yeah,
so
right. And I actually talked with the parks, with the folks that run the facility at Western, and they have a specific program to look at social movements in Bellingham, and they've archived a number of other things, projects that I've been involved with. So I think that they would be interested, and it's a long time ago now that I had a discussion with, I have to renew that discussion. And they are very selective. For example, they don't really take electronic records. All those that they think are worth keeping, they then print. So if it's emails, they print them all and put them into a file. But
that's not really true anymore, Frank.
Really? Good.
Yeah.
It was true before, because when we turned over a bunch of stuff, that's what they did with it. If their concern about it before was that the technology to actually read them would likely change and they wouldn't be able to access them later. So I'll have to find out if they're willing to do that, if it's on a CD-ROM or if it's electronic, where they store it electronically. A lot of the things that they have that are old, that are physical, they are now storing in electronic form and to make it more widely available. So many of the photographs, for example, they've done that with.
And I do think Evan, is that his name, Robin? I've never met him. He did have some good details about what they would expect to do with the different types of records that you have. So you all, I hopefully have that email from him that kind of outlines it. And
I didn't get a chance to send that on to everybody yet, so we're just having this first discussion right now.
Okay.
So
I actually just came on to say hello and say, let me know if you have any questions. We're here to support you. I saw my name on your agenda, so I wanted to show up. And, if you have any questions for me, I'm actually kind of have a family thing. I had to drive down to Seattle tonight, but I'm happy to listen in. But I've got a sick daughter who I need to deal with. So
Robin, there are a couple. I mean, excuse me, Nicole. There are a couple of really specific things.
Okay, would you please? Yes, that would be great.
We're going to talk about it later, but just an update from your point of view of what the position of the city is with respect to fires in the Chuckanut Community Forest. There was, I think, as you already know, Michael Chavario witnessed a fairly large fire, called the police and the fire. Fire showed up with a fire truck, but they said it was against the city policy for them to even interact if it appeared to be a homeless person that was either heating food or staying warm with a fire, that they were actually, what Michael's statement was that they were forbidden to interact with those people. They just leave them alone, which seemed pretty extraordinary, because when I've been in the woods lately, it's incredibly dry and it's adjacent to apartment buildings, and there's lots of reasons we don't want it on fire.
Yes,
So
I
just
do
looking for
think-
your
Mhm.
feedback about.
there
what
has
we can do
been
with that
multiple
concern.
conversations since that. And I think the most recent, I think that Michael's interaction with the fire department happened quite a few months ago. And he has been very concerned since then. And I've responded to him. Ed has had a great email that I haven't gotten back to Ed. All I could tell you is I'm so behind. But I will try and get back to you on that. I know the fire chief has responded and the police chief. And what we tried to articulate is that the fire department is not responsible for enforcing park rules, and no campfires in parks is a park rule. However, right now we have a no campfire rule, and I have ordered 24 no campfire signs to be posted around all the 100-acre wood, because I know how concerning it is for everyone, and I want to reinforce no campfires. However, the Parks Department, should an individual find a fire happening, we will extinguish the fire. Absolutely, because it's in Title 8. So our staff has actually already extinguished fires. It's happened at least once in the Arboretum. But the fire department at this point, when it's dry like this, they will extinguish anything that even remotely is on fire. You should have seen how quickly they extinguished a little one that happened down at Maritime Park last week. Very frightening. Also a campfire. It was out before I could get down there, and there was a column of smoke. So our community is vigilant. They're concerned. Our fire department works very closely with DNR. We also had a fire in Lake Padden that was also likely a campfire that went amok, and they took care of it, and DNR took over because it's wildlands. It was just outside the city limits. But I have absolute confidence in both the attention that we all have to this very critical and scary issue right now, and our responsiveness of both the fire department, the city, and that very particular instance that Michael had regarding one campfire of an individual. I don't have personal knowledge of what exactly happened, but I can only say that I have been assured and I have seen the responsiveness. We also had a fire in a grassland up in the north, and it was put out so quickly, and then DNR monitored it overnight. So they go in with heat monitors and make sure that everything's extinguished. They wait a full 24 hours before they leave it alone. So I really do feel confident, but I do think that signage and reminders and the vigilance of everyone in this very critical dry time frame, and the dry summers are just going to keep going, is super important. I don't want to belittle that concern, because it's a very serious concern from all of our perspectives. I rushed straight down to Maritime when I heard that there was a fire, and I walked right over to it and talked to a couple of transients and asked them if they knew anything about what happened or who might have been there or anything. And we are very, very vigilant, especially right now. Hope that helps.
Well, Ed has looked into it more than anybody. I think, Ed, would you like to just say what you've learned?
Sure. I'd start by thanking Nicole for what she just said.
Absolutely.
And Michael came to me and to Frank, everybody, and described the incident, which occurred in June, which was early on in the fire season, but still dry, given weather of April and May. I think the best thing to do is thank the city for responding to my queries more or less within 48 hours. That would be Nicole, the police chief, the fire chief. And based on their responses, I crafted and sent to everybody another email a week ago today, which nobody responded to. I'm not complaining, I'm just stating the facts. And so there isn't any need for a rapid response, but given the the details in the email I sent before. I believe there's still some tightening up in the fire policy that may need to occur. And maybe I can have a further conversation with Nicole on that and report back to the commission. But I really appreciate what you're doing, Nicole. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And I think
This has been the week of very long, extremely detailed emails from so many different, I don't know what's going on right now, but wow, like novellas on every topic from every citizen.
I think the thing that I heard Michael say, and I think everyone would want, is just a clear process for what you do when you see one. That's going to be action.
I think you call 911 and then if you see a fire, you call 911. Absolutely. And the fire chief and the police chief and I have we had a deep conversation about this topic, about how essential it is that we put out any fires in parks and that we need to be notified. So we have that understanding. That's all I can say.
That's really good to have that level of coordination and that simplicity. I think that's elegant, and it's what I think I wanted to hear. I actually personally put out a fire over on the north end of Chuckanut Bay, and it was a difficult thing because it about 2 hours after the city left, it blew up again. And had it not been for some kayakers and the people who live here, it would have taken out Edgemore, literally. And fortunately, the kayakers had buckets and we were able to put it out. But it was over my head into the trees and not into the grounds. And that was just a few years ago. And the wildland people were really good. The DNR, they're who you need because they actually dug around the roots. They knew exactly how to.
They know how to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a push right now to better train our own city staff and equip them for more wildland fire. It's just becoming more and more of an issue than it ever has. Hugh, this is your favorite topic, so.
That's right. I'm researching there's a plane made by a company called Canair up in Canada. They have them, and you can park one of those at our airport and dip down into Lake Whatcom and fill up a bunch of water and come back and drop it on someplace and come back and do it in 10 loads in less than an hour. And they could take care of Skagit and Whatcom and Eastern Washington. There's places that, and it's not so much that we know it's dry, but if we get a wind, the wind can be the real killer.
Yeah.
You can't beat the wind when it's bad and there's a fire, as we've seen it in Hawaii and we've seen it in Berkeley Heights years ago.
I saw a fire off of I-5 as I was driving down right around Bow, and it looked like DNR, and there was a helicopter dumping a big load of water on it. Looked like it was steaming. At that point, they were getting it out. But yeah, I think the responsiveness and the vigilance of reporting is just essential. And I think everyone's a little bit on edge about the fire risk right now.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
John McLaughlin, you've been extraordinarily patient.
Yeah, you've had your hand up.
So if you have any other issues directed to Nicole, I mean, I have something to respond to fire, but if Nicole has any other, or if you have any other issues that Nicole needs to respond to, I defer to her because she's so gracious in taking time out of her family issues.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. There was one other thing. So we've been talking for some time about our responsibilities before we dissolve. And one of the things that we were very interested in is trying to assure that water quality was monitored in the watershed there within the 100-acre wood. And we were looking around for people to maybe partner with about that and for mechanisms to do it and for the authority to do it. And Bob assured us that we have the authority to do it. And when I talked to Rand Jack about it, he also was excited about it, but the land trust does not want to do it. The other people that have come up that might be interested in doing it, and we haven't talked to the university yet. I had talked early on with Northwest Indian College. They have a group of students and a professor that do that sort of thing routinely, and we were looking at the possibility of setting aside some funding for them to do water quality management, and possibly one of the things that isn't sorted out very well at this point is about the status of amphibians in the forest, and maybe to have them do an amphibian study that would look at how they're doing and what their needs might be.
Mhm.
So those are things, and I was going to talk to you about it, and it turns out just as I suspected, we may not have time to sort this out. The folks in North Indian College many months ago had expressed an interest. When I went back with a more concrete set of issues, it's got to go all the way through their senior management and their board before they can do it. So it may not be possible. But those are a couple things that we felt we really wanted to try to dedicate some of our resources to. We felt that they were in keeping with the mission we have and the reason we were elected, and the reason that we the mission of the Park District. Now, we can't and wouldn't do anything like that without your agreement that was a good thing to do, because this is something we wouldn't be around to monitor. We don't want to create something that you don't want to do. So there
What
is,
if you wrote a letter, because I know your time is running out, and I know you have things that you still want to do, but we're going to have this remaining balance. What if you wrote down the things that you would like that funding to go for, because it is already absolutely going to be associated with the 100-acre wood, but you could write some requests for what things you'd like for us to study. And I don't want to promise anything, but I am in negotiations right now with the Northwest Indian College to have to do some programming at Woodstock Farm. I really, really want to get them on that site and helping us manage I'm more interested in cultural resources, but we've had several really positive conversations. So I think just in the last few months, I am developing a much stronger relationship with the tribe than I ever hoped was possible. So there's a lot of possibility. They are enthusiastic about doing different things. And if you could be pretty specific about what you're interested in, I think that that will help us direct that additional funding to those things that you're really concerned about, because you entering into a contract right now won't do you any good at all. It's going to have to be the city entering into the contract to do any of that type of work. But why don't you just articulate it in a letter and send it along and make it part of your whole, I don't know exactly how this whole thing is going to work with the dissolution, but if you have any other thoughts, things that you want us to make sure that we keep in front and center as we move forward to steward these woods, what are your most important things? I would love to have that kind of clearly articulated as a kind of a guiding document for that funding. I would really appreciate that.
thank you, Nicole. And there were just two more things. I know your time is
Okay.
up. One is that dog manure is collecting in the woods. There were about 30 bags some lady picked up and kind of dumped at the entrance. And someone else has come along and put them in a white bag that's hanging by the entrance, the one off Viewcrest. There is quite a bit of dog manure collecting in the woods, and the ones that she collected, I think, got removed eventually. But it would be wonderful to have some receptacle for them. And I know we talked about.
I think those are coming. I think they are imminent.
Okay,
They are imminent. We're doing some very first step things, and one of them is receptacles. We have just a second. We have our park ambassadors. Oh my gosh, they send us these daily reports. They're picking up they're poop fairies all over town. They're being poop fairies. I'm so annoyed by how many people think that other people should be picking up their poop bags, but the bottom line is at least it's in a bag. So I will double check on that. I know the no fire signs are first and foremost, and then we're going to we're going to be putting some preliminary wayfinding and also launching a volunteer. We're going to be to obliterate some of the social trails. We want to have it be volunteer led so that people have buy-in and they do the work, and that they can help reinforce it when we block them off, so that the people who use the woods the most often don't come and make their favorite trail open again. So that's one of our strategies that we're doing right now. I think some of those work parties are going to be happening here in the fall. So
Yes.
I'll double check on the receptacle, because I know we hadn't, that was our own staff requested. So I will double check on that.
Super.
So
And then the
thankful for
only
people picking
additional
up the bags.
thing is, I think we're really excited to see the interpretive information that would give people knowledge about why it's important.
Interpretive information, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because I talk with people all the time that have dogs off leash or dogs that are bags that they've left, and they kind of don't think it's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's hard to educate them kind of one-on-one. I think they feel
right.
confrontational a bit. Even when you're super nice, they still.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so
not
true.
an easy
We
thing.
are very hopeful that we are going to be successful in our 25th request for a communication person in Parks Department, because we need some public outreach campaigns that we just can't
Right.
manage on our own. That is top, first and foremost on our list, is dog waste public outreach. We've done some things with all volunteers with our dog task force. I don't know if you've seen those little signs that are all about it, but we've got to do, we need to do a really concerted effort about the why and the science behind it. I agree.
Super,
So,
thanks.
Nicole?
And then the one last thing I have, so I can get you out of here, is that there was a timeline for the project that I thought was going to happen this summer, and it looks like it would be hard to have that trail construction stuff. Is that going to happen this summer, or would it be next summer?
The preliminary steps are underway, but I think the design is not yet complete. We're going to do a couple of things this year, and then I think the major construction will be going out for bid once the design is complete. They did some very preliminary work, and I'm trying to remember what the timeline was. I think we needed a little more information. Oh shoot, my battery's running low. I think we needed a little more information. So they were doing a little more delineation to make sure they understood the hydrology. Like, that's kind of what's happening right now. They put up some informational signs at the entrances that you may have seen about the project. We've gotten quite a bit of comments about that. And then I don't think that the full trail construction will happen until we're going to try and bid it early in the year and get it going in the spring.
Okay,
That's the
great.
plan.
The update.
And we'll
Nicole's
keep you.
got a-
I do have to go.
Yeah.
Is there anything else anyone has?
Nicole,
burning
real
question?
very
Yes.
quickly, I teach a course in the fall, the same one that's done a bunch of design work for the
Mhm.
forest. They could be a group that does some of that volunteer trail removal and restoration you're talking about. Who in your department should I contact?
Gina Austin is
Okay.
the project manager. She would welcome
Okay.
that
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, wonderful.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nicole.
Have a good evening. Bye.
So let's see.
So Frank, I have a number of things related to what Nicole said and then before.
Okay, and then so we also need to go back and finish up. That was just kind of an impromptu addition.
Okay.
We also need to look at these motions that Robin had recommended we do. A motion for the closing the petty cash,
Mhm.
a motion for the PO box closing, and I don't want to let it get by before we do those. Is that okay, John?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So would anybody like to make a motion about petty cash, and can I get a clarification first? Bob and Robin, if we close the petty cash fund now, do we need a petty cash fund to pay our bills though before we exit, or do we make it effective on the 21st of September?
Any expenses that come in can be put on the claims form for July. Any that would normally be paid under petty cash, and I've mostly been doing that anyway and not using the petty cash fund. So I don't see any reasons that we need the petty cash fund.
Bob, you agree?
Yes.
So I'd like to hear a motion for closing the petty cash fund and authorizing a check to Whatcom County. Transfer the petty cash funds to the Park District WECU account. It's in the Parks WECU account back into the Park District General Fund.
Maybe one more discussion point.
Sure.
What if we dedicated a certain amount of money towards Robin after we dissolve? Just to tie up loose ends.
I don't think we can do that, but Bob?
That's a separate question that we should talk about. I don't know if we want to talk about that at this meeting or at the next meeting. I know Robin's talked with the county treasurer and the city finance director a little bit about that, maybe the auditor as well. And Robin, you can jump in here, but my understanding is the idea that Robin and I talked about today was, in addition to a resolution to dissolve the district at the next meeting that could be voted upon. And of course, you don't have to, you could have a special meeting and dissolve it later. But if you're ready to dissolve it, then there could be a schedule of payments that are anticipated that could be approved by not to exceed amounts. And then when the bills come in, the county treasurer could pay them under the authority of your not to exceed resolution. That's one thing. That's one way of doing it. These resolutions here, or these motions we're talking about here, are different. You're raising a good topic, John, that I think we want to cover in a separate resolution at this meeting.
Good points. So does somebody...
And Robin, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to John's thing, and to Bob's, is that I think I can only submit hours through until the Park District dissolves. So once it dissolves, I can no longer get paid by the Park District. So,
but we can do what Bob suggested, which is to have the county cut those checks, right, Bob? Is that right?
Yeah, the county acts as our treasurer. I think Robin's point is correct, though. Once we dissolve, we're done. And I don't think Robin can work anymore and get paid for it unless she's got a separate contract with the city. So we do want to wrap everything up at a date certain. My point was, we don't have to know everything even by the next meeting to accomplish that, as long as the work's done by the 21st of September.
Right. So the 21st of September is the date that was determined by the city notifying us of the completion of the work that they had to do, and allows us to go through the 21st of September. And that's documented in a letter that the mayor sent to us. So that date is certain, right, Bob?
Correct.
And so we can dissolve anytime before that we want to. We have another meeting already planned, and we can take care of most of this business in this meeting and the meeting that's coming up. And then after that, on the 21st, we have to have everything in a place where it would function without us.
Correct.
So back to this current, just to try to move us along. There's a motion that Robin has written, and does anybody want to put that motion forward with respect to petty cash fund, just to tidy that up?
I move.
Okay, there's a motion to authorize the closing of the petty cash fund and authorize a check to the Whatcom County to transfer all the petty cash funds out of the WECU account into the Park District General Fund. That's the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Ed. So moved by John, seconded by Ed. And further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Aye. So passes unanimously. The next motion is a motion to authorize the closing of the post office box. And I guess it's a technical thing, but Bob, could you say September 21st or September 30th? Does it matter?
I think we want to say September 21st, on or before September 21st.
Great. I agree. That makes sense. And there would be the forwarding of the email, any email that comes in after that, the Parks Department and the date is there. I mean, the address is there. And Robin will make a copy of that motion that's signed by the president. I'll sign it along with a mail forwarding form to the post office. Do I hear the motion is written out there? If
Could I
everybody
make one
agrees with that,
change?
with the clarification of 9:21 rather than 9:30? Yes, Robin.
To add the post office box number, I didn't put that in there. It's 4283.
4283. Okay. Anybody like to make that motion?
I make that motion and then we close that post office box in the 21st and September, and anywhere it comes in after that could be either forwarded to the county, the city parks, or return to sender. I don't care.
Why don't, since it's a formal motion, Hugh, I would strongly recommend we forward it to the city.
Okay.
And then we change it to the 21st and then we add the PO box number. Is that what your intention?
Yes, sir.
Hugh moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
There we go. John McLaughlin seconds. Further discussion? Hearing none, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Seems to have passed unanimously again. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, the resolution authorizing the closure of the safety deposit box and the contents be given to the City of Bellingham Parks Department. So, Bob, what's could you please explain, we need to tell them we're doing that? Or we need to give it to them? So this is the safety deposit box. It has a bunch of stuff in it, mostly all documents. I've got a key, somebody else has got a key, and we need to turn, I assume, do we turn that over to the city? Do they pay for it? What about paying for it? I think as I recall, we paid for it through the end of the year, right? Was all we need to do is to give the keys to the city, or do we need to empty it out?
Robin has her hand up.
Robin, please.
Two things. I think we can authorize to close the safety deposit box without saying where the contents are going if we haven't decided what we're doing with our records yet. So that might, if Bob agrees with me.
I do.
Okay, and then so that would make that a little less complicated. And then what was the other? I had another comment, but I've forgotten it now. Sorry. One track mind. So you could just make that.
Does this need to be a resolution or a motion?
It can be a motion.
Yeah. Robin, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, so you could just make a motion to close the safety deposit box, and we might want to put the safety deposit box number in there. I could look that up real quick. And you and John, I think together have to go in and open that out or close it down. And I haven't actually talked to the bank about that, but my guess is that you two opened it up, so you both might have to go together to close it up. Do you have any idea, Bob?
Whatever the bank's process is for closing it, just
I do.
all we have to do is authorize the closing of it. We don't have to write out what their procedures are for doing so.
Okay.
I move we close the safe deposit box with WeCoo.
I think we should thank WeCoo for being great partners. Anyway, we can do that in person when we close things up.
So we have a motion before us to close the department box, and yeah, WICU has been a great partner. I think we should thank him. Is there a second to the resolution to close the safety deposit box and give the contents to the city?
Give
I
the con,
think we decided we didn't have to decide where the contents were going yet,
Yeah,
or let's, yeah, because we
that's
don't.
okay. So then it's just that we close the safety deposit box, and that duty would be me and John Hymas, right?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second for that motion? Ed
I'll
says
s-
yes. And so it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
And yeah, there we go. Unanimously, although I didn't see John McLaughlin. Did you vote, John?
I did. I raised my hand and I
Awesome.
said yes.
Yeah, I know. I don't have all the people up above. I have to scoot back and forth. Okay, so that passes unanimously. So John, you and I can meet after this, talk after this, and just find a time we can go down and do it.
sure,
The main downtown one, right?
yes,
Yeah.
Holly Street.
And I was just ruffling through the boxes back there looking for my key. Got a big old fob on it, so hopefully I'll find it easily.
Robin, I think you might have the copy I used to have.
I don't think so, but I'll look.
Yeah, it was like in a Ziploc bag. Anyway,
Right, I will look.
Okay. But we will find the keys and get it emptied and closed. So records, what do we want to do with our own records? One thing that I have, as wonderful as Nicole was and as good as her intentions are, I have a little misgiving about leaving it to the city to do. That wonderful and detailed study that was done and commissioned by the city was never released and was never made publicly available except in the library. And when we were looking for copies of the study that Ann Eisinger did, that study for the whole city, it was not to be found. It basically got buried. And I just found that extraordinarily unfortunate. I really hope that we can put what we have in a place and in a way that it's accessible. I know that all of my personal records are going to go to the university, so that they are publicly accessible. And at least in my discussions before, they were actually pretty excited about getting them. They have a place that studies social movements, local social movements, and they were excited about having those records. So once we close up shop, I'm going to turn over all the responsible development records and all my records, my personal records from being part of this board to the university. And that's just what I'm going to do. But we can, it seems like turning over the website to her is a great idea. And it's got electronic copies of most of the key documents already in it. But that's just my thought. Open to a discussion of whatever anybody thinks. And once we've discussed it, a little bit of emotion. What do you think, folks? John, you've got your hand up.
So thanks. This was the first of the list of issues I wanted to speak to. This movement, to create the forest and fund it, elect us and all that is fairly unusual and I think quite valuable and could be a potential interest fairly broadly. And so I think endorse what you've been talking about as the archives or our records should go to the platform that's going to be most widely available to the public, defined very broadly, not just people living here, but people living across the country or perhaps the world, so they can see what our experience was and learn from it. So whether that's the city or whether that's the university or some other entity, I would argue for the broadest available accessibility and organized in a way that people can find what they need.
What Nicole committed to and reported was that there would be an indexing of documents and availability of documents, but she also said it would be subject to their records retention and other rules.
Right.
So I think it may require a deeper discussion with the city to find out what that actually means in terms of what would be retained, what would be disposed of, what would be, I think certainly it makes great sense that they take the electronic part of it. And Robin, I know that you've said that they are interested in electronic documents, but their argument to me earlier when I've talked with them was pretty compelling, that the means of retrieving electronic documents are not being preserved and that they've already had trouble with that. So they may be willing to do it, but I don't exactly know how they would do it or what they would do. So I think we probably need to have more discussion with both entities before we decide what to do.
Well, if you think of the origin of this commission, it came out of a context in which the city leadership was antagonistic to what we are doing now. It was antagonistic. They wanted to split up the place and sell off part of it. And while subsequent administrations have been supportive of it and celebrated it, there's no guarantee the future ones might not, and they might not want the example of what happened here to be accessible. But I think it's very valuable. And so it could be fine going to the city, but we would need some assurance that regardless of who's in the administration, that the records would continue to be available regardless of political personalities.
Do you think the city can make that commitment for future administrations? It seems unlikely that that's possible.
I'm the wrong person to ask. I don't know.
Yeah. Bob, I'm sure there's no legal thing, but have you got a personal opinion about it?
Well, the city does have legal obligations with respect to the records. And just because there's a legal obligation doesn't mean it's going to be followed, but they do. It's not just at the whim of whoever happens to be in the mayor's office. They have to retain certain records. They're able to dispose of certain records. So I do think there's some sideboards on what they can and can't do with the records.
Even when they're records that aren't their own records? It seems like the rule that I'm familiar with, it's the rules about their own records.
But they're taking custody of the records. I think they're going to be bound by the same responsibility.
As if they were theirs.
Yes.
They'll be the custodians of them. Okay.
Yeah. And at the last meeting, I said I thought that it made sense to give the records to Bellingham, and because I thought it would be the easiest. Because I have some familiarity with what Nicole was saying about state archives being somewhat selective on what they'll take and what they won't, and having to ferret that out is potentially going to take a lot of Robin's time. I think that what is best in a lot of ways is what's going to be simplest given our resources and the limited amount of time. Having said that, Robin brought me up to speed with a conversation she had with state archives, and they expressed an interest in taking this material. They sounded like they wanted it, and Robin, you correct me if I'm wrong, but they said they would take all of it and sort through it themselves once they get it. So I'm not as concerned about that. Based on Robin's conversation with state archives. And I do really think it is a decision for the board to make. I do think it makes sense to have the website go to the city. That is going to be the best option. As to the rest of it, I think it really is kind of up to you guys. Robin, I know you had your hand up. Do you want to add something to that?
Yes. One thing I wanted to ask you, Frank, is that there's a university archives and there's a Washington State archives, and they're separate. So if you've been talking to the university archives, the woman at the state archives mentioned that there were two other entities that share that building with them. And so our legal obligation is to the Washington State Archives. And so that's what I'm talking about. If
What do
we
you mean,
want to
Arby?
give documents, so there are certain things that we have to either give to them or the city of Bellingham. And other documents about, you know, social history and stuff, that may be a separate thing. Because the
You know-
Washington State Archives only takes it takes government documents, doesn't take anything else.
Right.
So they wouldn't want the stuff that happened before the park district. So,
Do you know what it is we're obligated then to archive?
well, there is a whole, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a resolution a couple of years ago about, you know, the records retention, and they have schedules. And, you know, if we turn everything either over to the archives or to the city of Bellingham, who is obligated to follow the same things that we would if we were handing them over, there are certain, like some things you have to hold for 6 years, and then after 6 years they can be destroyed unless there's some reason that it should be kept. And they are open if there were certain records that maybe wouldn't necessarily be kept, but that we would like to be kept, have kept in archives and be available because of the unique situation. It sounded like they were open to that, to designating those things, and at least looking at that idea, as was the city of Bellingham. You know, I talked to the person who would actually be going through the records, you know, and all of that, and she didn't think it was a problem. Nicole was sort of making it seem like it was more of an issue, the appraisal part of it, but you know, it's not like we have 50 boxes of papers to go to them. I hopefully not. I mean, I have like 3. Vincent has 3, and a bunch of those are probably going to be duplicates of what I have. Not all of them, but some of them. So
What would be useful to know is what we're obligated to archive versus what we can archive. And it seems like if we're obligated to archive things, it might make most sense to give those things for which there's an obligation to archive to the city. That makes sense to me. And then things that we're not obligated, nor would they be obligated to keep, that if we want to, we would give then to the university archive, which is the program that runs the local social movements archive. It's not the state archive that does it. And I presume we would be free to do that, given that they're not obligatory. Yeah, John.
Another option with the social aspect of it might be the Fairhaven Library. They have a lot of neighborhood archives that they keep up, and they have for, well, since they were established, I'm sure. But yeah, a lot of Happy Valley stuff we pass on to them.
You know,
I
it's
talked to
been
the
slated.
main library, excuse me, Frank. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say that the Fairhaven Library has been threatened for closure for a long time and may well be. I think we'll go to the main city library then.
I think whatever they have on hand would end up there if
Yeah.
they were to close.
They tried
Anyway.
that 10, 20 years ago. They ain't gonna close this.
When I talked to the Bellingham, to the main library, they just said no. They said, talk to the Whatcom Museum and to Jeff Jewell. So I called him and I have not heard back from him.
Yeah, you don't care.
So that's where that's left. And
Robin, I'm still a little bit unclear. So it makes sense that our minutes are legal documents of establishing our institution, maybe our budgets, and perhaps our emails. I don't know. Are you clear what it is that we're obligated to archive?
I am still determining that. There is a 197-page document that I need to look through. And Jen, the woman at the archives, gave me suggestions about how to do that, so I don't have to actually read every single page. But you know, they do want potentially the last 2 years of emails. And I have not had a chance yet. She just responded to my letter at the end of the day today, or my email about that. So I haven't had a chance to go and read the requirements for that. And so I need to do that. And and they may need further back. I don't know. I think a lot of it depends on the category of the email. So, and
So we have a file already of the emails that we gave to Larry Horowitz. So that was complete up to the date when that happened. Well, that was about
that was
2 years
on
ago.
one topic.
Yeah. No, that was all the email that we had. That wasn't on one topic.
It wasn't all the email we had. It was
Really?
on what he was asking about. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yes, it wasn't every park district email. And I guess what I would,
We provided to you guys every email we wrote though, right? I mean, I did.
well,
No,
no, I
And then
don't,
you went through them and excluded the ones that had kind of attorney-client privilege. I thought that was my understanding.
there was a specific time period.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact time period right now.
the other thing is emails for these purposes, whether they're required to be archived or not, are going to be based on the content of the email, not whether it's an email or not. And there are a lot of rules around different kinds of records as to whether one is retained for 2 years, one is retained for 6 years, and then it's destroyed, or whether it has to go to state archives. It's a bit of a complex process in that, not that it can't be done, it's not rocket science, it's just that it's going to be time consuming to go through each document and make a judgment call on whether this one fits in this category or that category or another category as to what its rule for archiving is. And I'm going to circle back and one more time say, I think given the little bit of time we have and the limited resources, we don't have an archive department here or really full-time staff. I think it's going to be better to give without making those calls ourselves, just handing the documents over and let the entity that takes them make those judgments. And that would either be State Archive or City of Bellingham, in my opinion, would be the best places for these to go. And you could divide them up between the two. I understand the university has a separate one, and there may be others. John mentioned Fairhaven, which may or may not be able to do it. I will say one more thing. We did a little bit of legal research on this. There is some statements that make it suggest that you're not supposed to donate these things to just any other entity unless you meet certain criteria. I'm not saying that would preclude us from doing so, but it's a little bit uncertain. And I'd rather take the safe course and simply donate it to the entities that I know we can totally legally donate it to. And it's one or the other. It's State Archive or Bellingham.
Or both.
Could you clarify that, Bob? I mean, I'm a little confused.
I know I didn't give you a very clear explanation because I don't have it. I didn't spend a lot of time with it. It's going to require a little more review to make the judgment. There is a guidance on how you handle archives. And there is a statement in there that says you generally should not donate to other entities unless you meet certain criteria. And I didn't try to sort out what that criteria would be. And frankly, I'm not sure that guidance is mandatory to comply with anyway. We could probably, because you've got authority as an entity to do what you want with your property, probably you could make arguments that you can donate it somewhere else. Nobody's going to be around to make those arguments, and probably nobody is going to question it one way or the other. So that's why I'm not raising it as something that precludes you from doing it. I'm just saying that there is some guidance out there that that precludes donations in some situations, or purports to. I can't be more clear than that. I'm sorry.
So it seems like we've got some questions. One is the duration. We have to go back in our emails, right? That it's obligatory, right? We don't have a choice. So at least 2 years back in our emails relevant to the business of the park district. Is that correct?
That's too, yeah, that's not that simple, because.
Well, I'm just beginning to make a list. Of course, it's not that simple.
Yeah, but so it depends on the content of the record and what category it falls into. That's what is going to drive where the record goes.
Do we know what the categories are?
Yes, we could do a report on what the categories are.
And we probably need to,
That's within the 197 pages that Robin mentioned,
Right.
but we could distill that down. We haven't done that yet, but if the board wants us to, we can.
For example, is our recorded meetings archived?
I would think if we've got recorded records, yes,
Yeah,
that would be something.
That'd be a good thing to have archived, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like we're not in a position where we even know the rules. So it would be premature to have a motion to direct people to do one thing or the other. It seems like we're going to have to put this forward to the next meeting when we have clarity about what the rules are about it. John Holmes.
Would some of these entities that are interested in our records request that from us?
Request what from us?
Our information, our emails and all that crap. Or is that already written down as ordinance? I mean, if they want this stuff, why don't they ask for it?
I think what Bob is saying is there is an obligation to preserve some of our records.
Sure.
We need to find out which records. There's an obligation to do it, and that we need to do that in one of, if I understood you correctly, Bob, one of two places, with the city or with the state archive. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation.
And those, well, not a recommendation. Those are the only two options we have. It's an opinion, not an opinion. I'm looking for facts. So I thought that this, what you said, was a fact.
I'm not prepared to say it's a fact, because as with anything in the law, there's lots of gray areas. And as I said, you could make an argument that we could donate it, say, to the university, and I don't think anybody's going to challenge it. So if that's where the board wants to send it, I think it's questionable, arguable, whether it's the right place to send it, or it can be sent there. But I think you can do it, and there's going to be no repercussions in all likelihood. That is another opinion. But I can't predict what someone else might do or say. I don't think it's going to be challenged, whatever you do.
So it seems like, you know, there are things that can be useful to the city, and we want them to have that, I think. So like most of the core documents are on our website. If they want our website, I think we should definitely agree to send that to them. We can do that tonight. I think what isn't clear to me is which documents, like the legal documents we've created through motion and document, are those ones the city want? They probably are. It makes sense to give those to the city. There probably is some sort of requirement about emails for some period of time. We need to find that out, because we're all going to have to go back and do the work of collecting those. I remember the Horowitz thing, and it took a lot of time and effort to do that. So we just need to be clear about how far back and what they want. And if what you said, Bob, it's related not just to, my understanding is that that's categorical. It's not, I mean, that requirement to be able to produce those is not by topic. We have to have access to those. And it would have been wise of us to create a chronologic file that all of us included in every email. So there was one email file that we had. It would been a smart thing to do back in the olden days. But we didn't do that. So each of us are going to have to go through our own files and create those. And there's some obligation, if I understand correctly, to do that. So it seems like there's just a lot more that we need to know before we can be deciding things. And if there's no requirement for either the records of our meetings or for our website, given the interest of the city in having it and maintaining it, I personally would be ready to listen to a motion to transfer our website to the city on our dissolution. That seems like a prudent thing to do. It would have many of the core documents in it, which it does, and that would be a good step in the right direction. And then, at least for my part, I think we just need to know what we have to do, what the requirements are. And then we can meet those requirements as the rules dictate. And then with what's left over, we can decide where it should go. Once we know what we have to do. Robin.
I can work with Luke and we can delineate, and Bob too, what things we do have to have and how far back we have to go. So I can work on doing that starting tomorrow. I've already started it. I just am not very far into the process. And we can let you guys know that as soon as possible, because that doesn't depend on where the records go. That's something that if we're gonna follow the RCWs and stuff, then that it has to be done in that particular way, whether we give them to the city or we keep them. I mean, the one thing is that the city has offered is that we could just give them our email addresses and they would go through and figure out which emails need to be kept. And they would be willing to do that over time if we didn't want to deal with it. John Hymas is, because he has his private and Park District emails together, is not going to get let off that easy. But so that's one other thing out there. I mean, I don't feel we can't wait till the 13th to start going through papers and emails if we have to do that. So either we have to have, I mean, this is my opinion, and Bob can let you know if he thinks it's a good opinion or not, but we either have to just make a decision to go through those records before we know where they're going, or we have to have another meeting relatively soon, like next week potentially, so we can say this is what we're going to do with the records. So that's
I hear Frank saying what would be helpful to him and probably the other commissioners is some kind of outline of what's required to help make the decision. And I think that that's something we should work towards getting to the board as soon as possible. And we will do that. And because I want, to me, the most important thing is simplicity for everyone, the board members and Robin, and keeping your legal costs down. And so let's see what we can get you to help make that decision. I was sort of trying to get to the bottom as quickly as we could and get the documents, because I heard from Robin that the city was willing to go through and make some of these calls for us, so we didn't have to. And I think State Archives was also willing to do that. But if we want to make the decisions as terms of documents, what we want to get over, then of course you need some more guidance on that. And we'll get you that.
It seems like what we have for official documents are the 3 boxes that Robin has, and what's in our box at the bank, and our electronic emails. I don't know what else there is that would be an official document. Perhaps the business transactions. I think they're all documented in the emails, though. So I think that, I don't know how it could be something different than that. The public records request, would it have to be responsive to that? Would it be anything that could be requested from the city in a public records request?
Yes.
So I went back and looked up what Horowitz requested, and what he requested was every email sent or received by all the park districts, board members. That's what he requested.
From
And
what period of time? Wasn't it for a certain period of time?
it was for a certain period of time, has to be, yeah. So it was from his
It
request.
was October 25th till when the public records were turned over, which was
Right.
either late December or early January.
And
That was just a few months.
Yeah.
well, as I recall, it cost thousands and thousands of dollars to process that request, though.
Mhm.
It was about 1,200.
So I think for all of us that have specific emails for this account, it's much easier. But John, I don't envy you the job you have to do.
Hey, I put everything in a CCFPD file. I drug
Awesome.
everything over. Yeah,
Strong
so
work. So it's easy. It should be relatively easy for all of us.
sure.
I have never sent an email out as a CP's Park District Commissioner to you guys, but I have received a bunch of them. I have never deleted them, so I have everything that's ever been sent out to me as a commissioner. So all I got to do is forward it to the city, and I'll be done with it, right?
Well, or whatever mechanism they want it transferred in.
Yeah.
And if there is a time limit.
John is waving.
Yes. John.
Hello.
Hi, John. I'm sorry. For some reason you're off on you don't fit on the timeline. I'm sorry. Please.
May I recommend we be smart about this? Almost all of our messages, with a few exceptions, probably mostly involving you, Frank, were copied to everyone, including Robin and Bob. And so it would be foolish and a complete waste of time for all of us to go through all of our email, because you're going to get 6, 7, or 8 duplicate copies. There are going to be a few exceptions where conversations between a couple people or something involving the president or the treasurer, things like that. But otherwise, Robin is going to have almost a complete record of all the correspondence. So would Bob. I'd recommend Robin because she charges less. If she has the time and we can compensate her for us. But let's be smart about this.
All right. Yeah, let's move on to
The problem with records requests is you have to be right, and except if you're wrong, it's $100 a day per document. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, but this isn't a records request. This is just disposing of your archives.
But is the city going to want an archive that can't be responsive to a record request? Or is it on them
It's on them. It's going to be whoever. I mean, we're out of existence, so there's no more liability after
Right.
that.
And as for me, John, every single email I send relative to this is always under my specific email address for this. When I looked through months and months of them, there were no exceptions to that. So I'm happy to. I don't think it'd be problematic for me either.
Right? Certainly, John Hymas would not have to go through all of his stuff, because I imagine almost everything he has is in the CC list to all of us.
Yep.
I don't know. Bob could maybe explain to us, and I don't. If we're gone and it doesn't matter, I'm not into the details. But my recollection of the records request, you had to have every to and from. So that one person gave it wasn't good enough, but I don't know. At any rate, I'm
Yeah, but this
big fan
isn't a
of-
records.
Yeah.
This isn't a records request.
Okay, and the city will take it, even though it wouldn't be responsive to a records request should one be
They'll
made.
take it. They'll take it, complete or incomplete. They'll take it. So will state archives.
Okay, great. Well, that
Did you
makes
want to get a motion on having the electronic website authorized to go to the city of Bellingham? Do we still want to do that?
Sure. Does somebody want to make a motion about the website and transferring that to the city?
I move that we pass the website on to the city along with our dissolution resolution.
So effective the 21st of September?
If not before.
Okay.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Right.
Great. You got to run over and say, Ed, did you do that? Okay, great. So it's
Yeah.
unanimous.
Yeah.
Great.
I just like to
And
say, sitting here in a nursing home, freezing my butt off with a blanket on my back because the air conditioner's on in this place. I don't know why, but they haven't got it adjusted in the middle of August. Very weird.
so, Robin, can you get us a little more clarity about what else we will be required to provide to either the city or the state archive?
Yeah, I will look through stuff and I will work with Luke and that let you know as soon as we can what we find. And
So then we can prepare that between now and our next meeting, and we can even make it happen before our next meeting without a meeting, right?
right, the only
Collect
thing
all
is
the required information.
if you just want to transfer, give the city your login information on the emails. Oh, I know the one thing I was going to bring up that we hadn't talked about was just the confidential emails and information, and that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but those will also be part of what's turned over, correct?
Yes, and let's look at that and
Try to figure that
give
out.
you some updated information on that one. Yeah.
Okay. I did find some legal information that said, which Luke and I talked about, which was that that emails related to coming up with the opinion can be destroyed. They don't have to be passed on to anybody. But so there's that.
Okay. That sounds great. When do you think we could expect a list of the things we need to turn over, Robin?
I will work very hard on it. I don't know that I can give you a specific date just yet, but as soon as we can get it done.
Yeah, I think if there's work to do, and given the simplicity that John McLaughlin suggests, maybe we can do it pretty more easily. But it would give us all time to get our records together that we would be obligated to disclose. And then we can decide at the next meeting where we send it. Once we know what it is that we are sending.
Yeah, I hate to say to you Friday and then we can't get it together.
I don't think anybody's thinking Friday. I think,
Okay.
in the next week, the first of next month, something like that would give us enough time to do it.
They're sort
Especially,
of the same thing.
yeah, and Bob can get a little clarity to us about the legalities along with your. You send it to Bob, he can send it to us maybe after he's looked at it. Is that fair, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do whatever the pleasure of the board is, of course, but having taken in everything everyone said, I think what I'm hearing is we would act to support Robin in coming up with some direction. And I don't know that you need something separate from us. I think that we can give you one direction that comes from Robin and also reviewed by our office. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
That's
Great.
what I'm thinking too.
And then the things that aren't required, like I said, I plan on turning the stuff I have that isn't part of that's my own record over to the university, to their program that studies social movements. And anybody else that wants to coordinate with that, I'm happy to drive around and gather it up and take it all over there. Any documents that might not be there. Things that I think might be very valuable are some of the kind of the book length things that's been made in the past, the various studies we've commissioned, that sort of thing. I think those might be helpful. Your emails might be helpful. When I turned other projects over to them, they were very grateful and they took the emails, but they did print them out. And then if they don't do that now, that'd be great. But they did keep them. I've done it a couple of times. I did it with, remember when the pipeline explosion occurred and those 3 kids died? I took all the records from 10 years of pursuing, justice on that issue, which ended up getting 3 of the 4 corporate executives into prison and a $100 million fine and a $7.5 million fund to build the Pipeline Safety Trust. Interestingly, the archive that the city has is very different than what actually happened. A lot of the public involvement is in the city's archive non-existent. Many of the things that were required for those things to happen, the city had little, if anything, to do with, and the city basically expunged them. That's the reason I'm interested in creating a more effective collection of documents that would be available for people that want to study these events. And John, I think that might be something you had in mind as well, is that having an objective repository of how things actually happen.
Yep.
And the things I have go back 25 years or more. So anybody that wants to join in that project, I'd be happy to do it. Mind you, all the things we're legally required to give to the city or to the state archive. My thought is we should probably give it to the city, but I think these are things that they might not want, or things we have more than one copy of. If we've got documents that might be useful, we might want to give them to the university as well.
So you're talking about all the challenge to various development proposals that long predate the commission and the park district.
Right. Yeah. Well, but they all are a result of this, the very initial opposition to this development. Yeah, exactly.
That's basically, it's a pretty expansive demonstration of the idea that it takes a village.
Well, Dr. Gibb and his children donated his archive to my collection so that I could give them to the university. Brad Rose gave me his collection of stuff, so I got a pretty big collection of stuff. And I was actually honestly waiting until we resolved before I give it to anybody, because there's a lot of information, boxes of information. But I wanted to be complete to the end of at least our involvement. And it might be the kind of thing that you were talking about, John. If there's somebody in another place that wants to do this, it might give them some idea of what it takes to do that. And so we are well into our allotted time, and I think we have a plan on that. We moved and passed to bequeath the website to the city, including all the primary documents. We've taken care of the various things that Robin brought up. That leads to the new business, which is a party celebrating 100 Acre Wood. And I think some of the people have volunteered to organize that probably aren't here right now. Anybody have an update on it? Robin?
I just wanted to say there was one other item under old business, which
Oh,
is,
yeah, review
if
updated
you guys
budget.
wanted to review the updated budget. I just updated as of the end of July, and I think it's still around the same amount of money. It's 189,000 to be potentially left over. That might change a few $1,000s, but I think it's actually mostly accurate, as close as you can be.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. So especially because you were thinking of the stewardship thing. But if that's not
Right.
going to happen, that anyway.
Yeah, I got it.
Bob, and was that from the 5 o'clock email, or was that in an earlier one?
No, this is the one that came out Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also sent out the minutes, but they came out at like 3 o'clock Tuesday morning, and I apologize.
Um,
Great. So $189,000, something like that in the budget.
Will be left at the end of the park district.
Yeah, and have we paid, we've already paid the $75,000 to the land trust?
We paid the $75,000. All that's really left are legal fees, my salary, Richard's bill, and a few other the things from John King about the website, which we don't have a bill yet because we don't even know exactly what's happening. But now that we have clearly said that it's going to the city, I think there'll be a small bill from him potentially.
Okay. Let's move on.
Okay, so on to new business, the
Yeah.
party celebrating 100 Acre Wood. I don't, any updates on that anybody knows of?
I talked to Vincent this morning and just about records, and we talked briefly about the party, and it doesn't really sound like anything's happened yet, just that the idea has been put out there, but nothing has gone forward with that. So and I was willing to help just off the books, but right now, you know, not charging for my time. But at the moment, I don't have any extra time to devote to that. I can once we're close to the end, or once the park district evolves. I'd love to help, but I don't really have much time otherwise right now.
I was kind of surprised none of our other kind of volunteer board members are here tonight, but we can pursue that individually, I guess. So the other new business that I have here is the monthly expenses and cash flow sheets. So petty cash in WECU as of 7/31 is $2,967.11. That will be transferred to our general fund per our motion earlier tonight. Treasury report as of July 31st, Whatcom County Treasurer's monthly report, $275,644. Received tax of $444, paid out $8,994 in operating expenses. That includes the $75,000 in land trust. We have a motion to approve the district payroll form for wage for Robin Albro for 32.25 hours in July. Total gross of $806.25. Do I hear a motion?
I move to do.
Oh,
Second.
So John Hymas moved, Hugh Beatty seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Everything unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Consent agenda. Motion to approve the following payments is sought. Payment for invoice 04400 from Carmichael Clark for $6,982.50. Payment for the July 26th invoice 311 from Hartel Enterprises for technical service for June, which is $225. Payment for the August 10th invoice 156400 from the Washington State Auditor's Office for the audit of 2019 to 2023, $2,882.25. Payment August 20th for mileage invoice from Robin Albro for June, July, and August of $29.36. Payment for July 27th, receipt from Robin Albro, Secretary of State Annual Report filing fee of $20, and payment for August 24th, received from Robin Albro copies and office supplies for $20.39. Do I hear a motion to approve these payments?
I have a motion to approve.
Ed moves. Any second?
Second.
John McLaughlin won the race. So Ed and John, any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There we go. Passes unanimously. We are an agreeable group. Reminder that Robin Albro will send an email to 3 board members, John, Hugh, and Ed, and please respond to confirm the approval of paying the bills as listed in the consent agenda and payroll. Next regular meeting will be Wednesday, September 13th at 6 p.m. It'll be held on Zoom and in person at 1108 11th Street, Suite 303, above Fairhaven Bicycle. The door is locked. Phone numbers on the door, call to be let in. Anyone attending the in-person meeting is required to wear a well-fitting mask. As voted on the Park District, October 26, 2022. Parenthetically, there is a new and very interesting virus variant that is has 28 mutations. It's a similar thing that like what happened to Omicron, and could be significant. It isn't sure yet. It showed up in 4 countries all at one time, and it's spread to 2 more countries. It appears to have a slight reproductive advantage over the current virus. When there's a big reproductive advantage, it'll take over, and we'll hear a lot more about it. It may or may not do that. We'll wait and see. But I think we're prudent to continue our course in having in-person online meetings. Robin, you got your hand up.
I wanted to read you guys an email that came from Susan Kahn today. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Kaun. As a former commissioner of the CCFPD who resigned due to my husband's illness, I am so proud that the board completed the mission of the district, ! Please let them know how proud I am of their work, ! Kindest regards, Susan Kahn.
All right.
Very nice.
And also I wanted to mention, oh, John has his hand up, but I wanted to mention this is Bob's last meeting.
Exactly. John?
Real briefly, thank you. The few things that I deferred to let Nicole leave. First, the specter of fires in the forest is really scary. And as we know, most fires are human caused. The issue of camping on public lands is a much bigger issue with many confounding factors associated with it. But I'm wondering if, given the risk of fire, that any fires found in the place could lead to expedited eviction for any campers. Right? Camping in the forest, I know, is illegal and all that sort of stuff. It occurs. But if the city could enforce some sort of policy that if anyone has fire, even if it's contained, that would lead to eviction. The idea there is for prevention. If people understood that if they start fires, there's going to be rapid enforcement, that could lead to preventing fires. The second. Yep.
There's a countywide burn ban on right now, so they should be able to just cite them and arrest them.
Yes. The second issue I noticed in the July minutes, there's some question about Robin Matthews versus Angela Strecker regarding the Institute for Watershed Studies. Robin has retired now a couple of years ago, and Angela is the person to contact. And then third, regarding monitoring and interest in Northwest Indian College, I was wondering if Western Red Cedar as a cultural resource would be of interest to them. There are few places with cedars this large that could serve as a source of culturally harvested bark. And so the Indian College might be particularly interested in that as something of further interest. And then finally, I will be gone for the next meeting, but I look forward to seeing all of you at the party.
John, just to say a couple of quick things. One is there are, I think, 2 trees now that are entirely stripped of their bark that are cedar in the forest. I'm sure they weren't done by native people.
They were, I've seen them. They were not harvested in a way that is consistent
with native practice. Yeah, that's for sure true. So I think it's a real issue, and I would love to see us engage and I was delighted by the enthusiasm shown by the city and Nicole in working with Northwest Indian groups, particularly Lummi or Nooksack. So that's a great deal.
Yeah.
Well, given that, John, this is your last meeting, and Bob, it's your last meeting, I did want to just extend just an incredible heartfelt thank you to both of you. You both have had a very, very long and very distinguished careers with us, and have both contributed mightily. John, with your intellect and with your academic rigor that you always have, has guided us wisely, and your effort to work long hours and create documents were exceedingly useful to us is unparalleled. So thank you so much. I'm sorry you're not going to be here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the party. And Bob, you're sort of a board member in addition to being our attorney. We appreciate not just your legal advice, but your wise counsel. And we so much appreciate everything you've done for us and with us. And we look forward to seeing you on the streets as well as at the party, I hope.
I'd like to add that I think I'm the only one left when we hired Bob, and his dedication really showed through, and he was in it for the long haul. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you for that, John and Frank. And this is, to me, if I start talking too much, I might get a little emotional, because this has really been an important endeavor. And not only have I thoroughly enjoyed it and to be able to work on something as important as this is a privilege, but also a privilege to work with all of you and the former board members. Everyone first rate, and everyone brings a lot to the table, every one of you. And I really have enjoyed getting to know you all, and the prior board members as well. But before I go too far down, I do have, as the lawyer, I've got to make one more minor point for you guys to think about, because I won't be here for the next meeting. And so Nicole had the suggestion about writing down what the district might want the city to spend its money on. That's an opening that I think we should walk through that open door. And my suggestion is that somebody write that out for the next board meeting, so that the board can vote on it, and it can, we'll have an official record then that this is a request from the board at its last meeting, that the city do these things with the money. And I think that'll have some punch. I hope it will. We should at least take that opportunity. So I'm hopeful that somebody will have the time to work on it before the next meeting and be able to propose something.
All right.
Bob, that's a great suggestion. I think we have a head start. Several years ago, we passed a list of restoration priorities. Some of those are on the park master plan and others are not. And so those could form the foundation of our list, as well as the monitoring that would go along evaluating progress towards those goals.
Good idea.
So just remember that September the 13th is not our regular meeting, fourth Wednesday, so it's coming up pretty quick. So everybody that's going to do stuff, remember you don't have much time to do it. For the 13th. Just a
So I'll
few
work
weeks.
on that letter to Nicole for us, and I'll look at those restoration priorities, John. And I'll send that out to everybody for your comments. Again, I'm putting that down for the 31st, so you can expect it on the 1st or 2nd. Both the things that I said I would do.
Go Mariners.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
I
great
heard
ride,
that,
isn't it? I'm just enjoying the ride, John.
out at Jackson Beach on this weekend, they're gonna put the totem pole up that they hauled out to Sea Aquarium a couple times, and they're gonna install it permanently out there in the San Juan Island at Jackson Beach. The Bummies are doing it this weekend coming up.
And for those of you that haven't followed it, it's a due recognition, but it's a very sad one. Before the Orca was returned, she died. And so the remains is a plan to bring the remains back too. It isn't clear that that's going to happen for sure yet that I know of.
That is a reminder of the costs of delay. That's on Sea Aquarium, but we have a governor and senators and a number of our other leaders that have been delaying on action to support the remaining orchids. And so that's a warning for the rest of us. I'd also finally add that while you were starting your meeting last month, I was in the Rainier backcountry counting butterflies and plants in relation to climate change. But that time I was writing my notes from just having witnessed 4 wolverines pass within 7 meters of me.
Wow. Nice.
Look, you munched on there.
There's some good news.
Wow.
Good news you made it back with all your fingers and toes too.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, I read it too. Wow.
Okay, Frank.
So anything else for the good of the order? All right, I think that okay was that we're gonna end the meeting now, and it's the 13th. All of you open your calendars and get it on there. The 13th at 6 o'clock, right here. Look forward to seeing everybody then, and in cyberspace before then. Thanks. Bye,
Thank you.
Bob.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
John. Thank you both, and good to see everybody else too.